Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the CEU Executive MBA Open Day event. My name is Kocsany, I'm the program officer. My colleague Thomas Lammel, the senior program manager, will present you the program as it is. So, Thomas, the floor is yours.
Sure. Thank you very much, Akosh, for the nice introduction. We realized that many business strategies have come to an end, more or less nowadays. And what we see is a dramatic shift in digital transformation and the emergence of entirely new ways of thinking, of organizational forms, for example, agility, as well as the world that is more difficult to predict. I mean, just to give you a couple of examples, in the last decade, we have seen the biggest financial crisis in modern history, the largest refugee crisis since World War II, and the biggest pandemic in a century. So I think it shows that the world hasn't become more predictable in the last couple of years. It brings up the question what management education is and what its value is. And the question, is an MBA still worth it? And given the changes in technology, availability of online learning nowadays, and it is easy to say that CEU EMBA is very much worth it. And this is how we're responding to the new challenges. If you look at MBAs in your region, in Budapest or Vienna, that are city-based, this is what they typically look like. They offer a standard MBA curriculum. They offer classic classes, very traditional classes on economics and finance. They are weekend programs in a weekend format with local faculty, because like with weekend format, you cannot invite international faculty to the programs. They, thanks to the weekend programs, they offer a low number of international students on average. And the tuition for these kind of programs is up to 80K plus expenses, of course. So the weekend programs have the advantage of no work interruption. Now contrast this concept to top business schools in the world that are ranked among Financial Times rankings. And it tells you a very different story, because the business schools, like the best business schools in the world, offer full-time programs. They're sometimes a year or even longer, which means you're out of the job, which means you have to relocate your family. You have to start a new life, basically. And thanks to this format, the cost is pretty much higher. It's about 120K plus expenses to and a new life, basically, plus expensive of a new life. But what do you get with those programs? Of course, they offer top-notch campus experience. We know all the best business schools and their campus experience. They offer great faculty. They offer international faculty with outstanding industry engagement. They offer a more international student body than part-time programs, because international students are able to commute to to move to these programs, to give up their lives and to move to the US or to the UK to pursue higher education at these business schools. And they're distinctive mission-driven MBA programs. CEU Executive MBA bridges these two concepts and offers the best of these two worlds. That means we offer unrivaled affordability, and I'll tell you later how that's possible. And we offer no work interruption due to the modular format. Again, I will tell you more about the modular format later. The modular format of 10 modules allows international faculty and international participants to commute to the program, because they can stay in their lives. They don't have to give up on their jobs, etc. We offer full access to campus facilities like student career services, alumni services, library, etc. And we compete with leading business schools providing informed experts from top universities in faculty. I will talk about our faculty later on, but it's the best faculty you can have in the world. This is Mark Kaufman. He's CEU professor. He's an expert in behavioral economics. He's a PhD from Harvard. Joy is an expert in finance. She helps people without strong knowledge in finance to be comfortable and to be relevant in that field. Miklos, he's a specialist in data analytics and an influential thinker. He's a PhD from Harvard. And Professor Adam Zawodowski, he's our finance professor, one of our finance professors. He's going to show you financial models that help you in decision making. And beside that faculty, we have visiting faculty, for example, Professor Christian Salos from Stanford University, or Miklos from Columbia University. We have Paula Caproni from Michigan, Ross Business School. We have Omar Hernandez from Berkeley, and we have Professor Hui Chen from the University of Zurich. This is what the program structure looks like. I've talked about the modular format before. Now I want to emphasize on the modular format. It shows you that there are 10 modules in total. They are either 4 or 9 days long. The first module and the leadership modules during the summer are 9 days long, and all other modules are 4 days long. They typically take place over weekends and over popular European holidays. We're piggybacking around popular European holidays like November 1st or May 1st or August 15th, because we want to minimize disruption in your work life. Because with those long weekends, you might want to, you're taking off anyways, but you could take this time, you could allocate this time more effectively on an MBA and higher education. What is clearly be seen in the chart is that the dates are fixed. We're not moving around module dates. So the setup allows you to plan your work, study, and private life more effectively and more in advance. You know what modules you have to travel to, and you can basically book your flights even now for those modules. Beside the modular format, there is a pre-course work before every module, which will be communicated a couple of weeks before every module. It's a reading package with articles, etc., to so you get into the content more easily. And the modules themselves are more intense. They're from morning till the evening. They're very intense. We want to put as much knowledge into your brains as possible. And after the modules, there is a post-course reflection on what you have learned during those modules. So you're not, you will be reflecting on the content you've learned before. You will get to know one of our alumni later on, but what can be said about the alumni network in general is that CEU is very proud to have a very active and a very approachable alumni network. Within your studies at CEU, CEU gives you full access to all these services implied, like alumni services and career services. So you will be part of that CEU family from the day you start at CEU, or sometimes even before. If we can manage to connect you to fellow participants, you can arrange joint traveling or joint accommodation, etc. How can we do this? Our mission is open society. That we promote open society since our foundation in 1991. And thanks to our founder, George Soros, we have one of the largest financial endowments in Europe. And we are using that financial advantage to offer the best learning experience for you. We have graduate students from around 123 countries. We have faculty from 50 countries. As I said, we have alumni in more than 140 countries all over the world. And we, as I said, we're using the financial endowment to offer the best learning experience for you. Another step on offering the best learning experience to you is the newly established Open Society University network with seed funding of $1 billion, which you can have access to in the future. So what does Open Society mean for us? It means skepticism towards dogmas, hierarchies, and privileges. We want you to get engaged in debate in class. We want you to challenge our faculty, to challenge your fellow participants, and we call it radical rationality, that every idea can be challenged based on facts, based on evidence, and not based on narratives. We've seen in the last couple of years, we've seen, especially on social media, an exchange of ideas based on narratives. And I think the current Corona crisis proves the fact that we're living in a time where facts and evidence is more important than ever, and not narratives and conspiracy theories. We're cherishing diversity and opposing prejudice. Diversity is not an empty catchphrase with us. We really cherish diversity in every single context. For example, as you will get to know your class in the future, you will be exposed to a class that with gender equality, with diversity with regard to nationalities, cultures, but also with regard to cultural backgrounds, educational backgrounds, and industry backgrounds. So we're not aiming at people, let's say, from only consultancies for the Executive MBA. The Executive MBA is the perfect program for people from human rights activism, from NGOs, from environmental organizations, but also from corporate and engineering, big data, or whatever, wherever you're coming from, you will be a fit in the program, to the program. This is your typical classroom. It's a Harvard-style classroom, and it's a representation of what your participants will look like. So your classroom will consist of about 65 managers with 14 years of work experience on average, and including 3 years of leadership experience on average. We have, in general, it can be said that our average participant has more than 3 years of managerial experience, but 3 years of managerial experience is the bottom line here. The module and the participants are involved in immersive debate during the modules, and the modular courses invite you to engage before the modules in your content, to engage with your team fellows, and to discuss and debate every topic you will be dealing with in class. That combines high-level strategic decision-making leadership training, especially in the summer leadership programs, with cutting-edge, interactive, case-based instruction in digital transformation, finance, economics, marketing, innovation, entrepreneurship, big data, business, politics, etc. How can we offer all that we offer to you? We have, thanks to our financial endowment, we can offer a relatively low tuition of 25,000 euro, which might sound ridiculously low to you. But again, thanks to the financial endowment, we are not just sitting on the money pile. We're passing on that financial advantage to our participants through lower tuition and through fellowships and scholarships. About the scholarships and fellowships, I want to add that we offer a variety of financial help through the Open World Scholarship, the need-based scholarships, or country-specific merit-based scholarships. I kindly ask you, if you're interested in these scholarships, I kindly ask you to drop in your question in the chat box, or to get in touch with me directly after this webinar, because it would be too much content to provide all the information on the available scholarships within a PowerPoint presentation. But feel free to just ask me what scholarships are available for you. We have negotiated accommodation with partner hotels, both in Vienna and in Budapest. Partner hotels from the budget to the luxury level, so it fits every purse. And we have negotiated travel discounts for flights with Lufthansa and Austrian Airlines, so you would enjoy a discount, cheaper flights flying into Budapest or Vienna. So basically, what I want you to do is to join us, to join the Open World, and be part of that family, and become part of that family, and to become a future leader. And I want to draw your attention to two deadlines, to two important dates that might be relevant to you. One is the 6% early bird discount for applications coming in December. And the latter one is the final deadline for applications, which is March 21st in 2021 through our website. The whole admission and application process is being dealt through that website that can be shown here, and it's fully online. So I will now pass on the to Laurent Zambori, who's consultant and at Boston Consultant Group here in Budapest. He recently moved from Munich to Budapest. He's an alumnus of the 2018 class, and I would like to get to know from Laurent, like his impression, like where his decision-making process on how did he get into CEU and his career impact and how it helped him, how CEU helped him in his career. Laurent, you've got the floor.
Thomas, thank you. Thank you for the invitation. Seeing all the pictures, all the photos, it brings back a lot of memories from CEU, a lot of good memories. And I would go back to the first day when I got in touch with CEU, which was an open day back in 2013. And I remember the presentation, the professors who were there. The only thing I don't remember is who was the alumni speaker and what he said. Getting back to your questions, Thomas. For me, it was quite a big change to 2016 when I started, and looking today, it was a big leap. And I think CEU contributed it in many ways. I would just focus on one way on it. As you said, I'm now in consulting, and I believe in consulting, it's having successful clients what makes you a successful consultant. And the same somehow applies also to EMBA. Having a successful business school program means having successful clients, successful students who are joining the program. And somehow today, this is harder to see, but when you have an open day and you look around in the classroom, you see the other participants and you're connecting with them. And for me, it was very important that CEU managed to bring this out. It was an open environment where you could really bring out all your ideas, even if it sounded really stupid. You could ask those questions, you could probe those questions throughout the group, and not just probe it, you could also try it out. So it wasn't mentioned here, CEU also has an innovation lab, which helped some of us who wanted to go into it to try out our ideas, to really get support, professional support in launching those ideas and seeing the market, how you could become on this way more, let's say successful, but more professional. So this human side, it was very important and it brought a lot. And if I compare it to what brought the biggest change to have this career was really having these interactions with a very diverse group within CEU, not just business-minded, but also coming from NGOs, also coming from an artist association, coming from legal. It was a very diverse background with a lot of diverse ideas, and really this openness and this push from the professors that every voice must be heard and every opinion must be respected. So I think for me, this was the highlight of CEU, and this is what the participants also would see if they would be now in one classroom.
Maybe you can say something about the alumni network. I mean, we know each other through the alumni network. When I started at CEU, I was reaching out to you. I didn't know you before, and we were coming to Munich for a recruitment fair, and I was just reaching out to you. And you, I mean, that shows how approachable this network is. But maybe you can, since you are part of the alumni network, you can say something about it.
Yeah, you mentioned my decision to move back to Budapest. That was a part of the decision. So I'm coming originally from Romania. Then I moved to Munich, where I lived 3 years. And coming back to Budapest, one of the main reasons was getting back in contact with the colleagues I had here. So a part of the class was international, and a part of the class was coming from Budapest. Actually, it helped me get into BCG. I have to be open about it. Is reaching back to CEU and asking about connections in Budapest, and it was a recommendation to send in my CV here and not in Munich or not in Bucharest. So it was also part of CEU why I landed here in Budapest now.
When you think back on your study, what do you think about faculty, like the level of academic exchange with faculty and fellows?
You had some slides in the beginning. If we are looking at those slides, if you are looking at those credentials, I think it's all said about the expectations of the level of the faculty. But I would also add to it how approachable the faculty was. So we were in a smaller group, which was made the experience in the classroom very interactive. It wasn't a download of information from this faculty. It was really an interactive class where we could bring in a lot of the content. And the classes were also very varied in the type of classes. So we had from company visits, we had hands-on, we had workshops, we had even board simulations. Having the support from this faculty in these type of interactive experiences was great.
But can you briefly talk about the diversity in class? Like what did your class look like?
I don't have the numbers, but I have the regions in mind. And it started from the East, I think somewhere close to the Middle East, where we had participants, up to Ukraine, Romania, Hungary, of course. We had participants from Germany, and we had also from the US, if I remember. So that's quite a global coverage. And this diversity was not only regional, it was also on industries. As I mentioned before, we had a lot of different profiles, and this really contributed to seeing many diverse perspectives on the topics we were talking about in the class.
So you mentioned that CEU helped you in getting your current position at BCG through the Alumni Network, but can you tell me something about like how did the content that you've learned at CEU help you thrive in that position or through all the positions that you had since then?
Let me get back to a bit of my background. I'm coming from computer science. So when I started the executive MBA, I had close to zero knowledge in economics and in MBA topics. I was already leading a team of software developers back in Romania, but my skills were mainly as a team leader, as a small project manager, and not related to business. And they're starting really with the basics from accounting to managerial finance, and then going into deeper and deeper topics really gave this broad perspective where in the end, I received an offer to join department level job in Munich, and then taking over one of the lines of businesses, me being the only one who was pursuing his MBA. And that really helped getting out of this, let's say, deep technological view into a more broader managerial view. And pushing on the professional side of managerial competencies moved me actually a step closer to consulting. So doing the type of jobs I was doing in Munich, I just wanted to expand and be broader in these topics. You mentioned in the beginning digital transformation, which is less and less about technology. It's more and more about outcomes, business outcomes. It's more about humans. It's more about change management, making it all happen. And that is not coming from a technology education. That is something where CEU really helped lay the foundations where I could then build. So I hope that answered your question.
Yes, it did. I mean, thank you. You mentioned that about the push, and I think that's part of our learning experience to kind of push you outside of your comfort zone in order, because that's where you learn new things outside your comfort zone. Because, if you always stay within your comfort zone, you will never learn something new. And part of the diversity, you know, diversity itself doesn't help, but being exposed to diversity, to being exposed to new, you know, approaches, new cultures, new ideas, that's where the benefit of diversity kicks in. And you perfectly described it. Thank you, Lorant. We need to move on to Vicky, who's, thank you very much, Lorant, for joining.
Thank you, Thomas.
We're moving on to Vicky, to Viktoria Antal. She's Vice President of Morgan Stanley, and she is participant of the current cohort of Executive MBA. So she can tell you more about the current experience, which is pretty, you know, new to her. She started this year. And please, Vicky, introduce yourself and tell us more about your journey.
Thank you, Thomas. Hi, everyone. So as Thomas said, my name is Viktoria Antal, and I'm leading a financial modeling team at Morgan Stanley. I was pretty much in your shoes a year ago, I would say. I was wondering what to do, whether I want to pursue new opportunities, whether I want to study further, what should I do, which university, etc. So I made quite a lot of research in the topic. I was wondering whether to make another or take another professional qualification, go for a PhD, go for an EMBA, etc. But what I found is that most of the EMBAs on the market did not or do not necessarily fit into my time or budget. And then I was kind of fortunate when purely accidentally I ended up the inauguration of the Vienna campus last year. And it gave me a very cool experience about CEU. And then I learned that they are relaunching an MBA program with a little bit different setup than they had previously, with a modular setup. And I found they had very great professionals already on the agenda that time. So this is where my interest started growing. And quite fortunately, I got accepted to this program. And I'm already maybe the third, I could say it was the third module, because we had the first one called Strategy in a Crisis because of this COVID situation, which was a little bit unorthodox, but pretty much fun. So we managed to talk to a lot of professors. It was less stressful. Obviously, it was a little bit different in March because it was just the start of COVID in the entire continent. And it was just so cool to see so many people from all over the world, from India, from the US, from Egypt. We also have someone from Australia. I think he lives now in Slovakia. But it was just so much fun to see how diverse group of people got together in this program. And then we had another module in Budapest during the summer and another one just recently in Vienna. And that was probably the best experience for me, because unfortunately during the summer, I was still online because I got in quarantine. But finally in October, I managed to participate in person. And when I could talk to my classmates, I would say, or the professors, it was really a great experience. And as Thomas said, before each module, you need to prepare for that. You have 6 weeks before that. So if you apply for it, take it seriously. It's not easy. You really have to prepare for that. You really have to read a lot. But this is what makes all of these classes meaningful. This is how you can have meaningful conversations, debates, and very nice chats about interesting topics. For instance, whether you like or not Elon Musk's compensation package. That was a pretty fun debate, to be honest, during the latest cohort, the latest session, which we had in Vienna. And the other thing I really appreciate in this program is the support teams we have. We have a meeting every week with my support team. We discuss a lot of things, not only related to certain questions regarding the courses, but also interesting topics coming out during the week, or just suggesting great opportunities to each other. And we have a lot of presentations or a lot of topics we have to work on together also for these courses.
You mentioned the Strategy in a Crisis module our EMBA started with. This could create some confusion with online guests because it's not listed in the module. We proved agility. with the start of this non-credit course in April. And my faculty co-director Maciej Kieslowski or Yusuf Akbo will tell you more about that, because it tackles, you know, the whole COVID topic anyways, which I have received questions for. And you've mentioned, I mean, how does, you've mentioned that it does not interfere with your work life. I think this is something very important for corporate people, because, you know, I think it's more difficult for corporate people to take off, you know, to compromise with your private life and your work life to pursue higher education, to do an executive MBA than it is with entrepreneurs, for example. Can you tell me something about the balance that you have with the modular format and how it helps you to not to compromise with your work life?
Yes, I would say it still needs a lot of time, but it's a lot better setup than having classes every weekend, because you can plan ahead. You know that you have these couple of days dedicated to this program, and you also it's also very convenient that like for me it was very convenient that I'm in Budapest and I could attend it here in Budapest, so I didn't have to travel too far away. And even then we had very great professors from all over the world. Just it's not me who have to travel there, but they come here. And I think that's a really cool thing also in this module, that way you are not limited to a couple of great professors, let's say only from England, but they bring everyone here to you. So that's very convenient, really. In addition to know in advance that you have this 9-day period and this 4-day period when you have to, which you have to dedicate to this program.
And the last question I have for you, because we need to move on to the research presentation by Mike LaBelle. Can you tell me, I mean, you've mentioned the diversity already. Can you describe your current class maybe in just a couple of words?
You mean from where they are from, or? Yeah,
the backgrounds and, you know, the different approaches they have. And
yes, we have a lot of people from very different areas: IT, consulting, audit, pharmacy or pharmaceutical industry, marketing area. So I don't even know whether I mentioned that. Most probably didn't mention all of them, because it's just so many different fields and areas. And that's actually another thing why I found it very interesting to participate, because it's one thing to meet leaders from your own company and industry, but it's also very interesting to see how the same thing works within other industries or other companies, etc. And that's another great point in this entire program.
Thank you, Vicky. Thank you for joining us. I think our online guests really appreciated your insights, because you are part of the program. You're not, you know, conceptualizing the program, but you are part of the program and undergoing the current executive MBA. And I think you have a really authentic viewpoint on the executive MBA. Thank you. Bye.
Bye.
So the next item on our today's open day agenda is the research presentation by Professor Michael LaBelle. I already mentioned him in the beginning. He's an associate professor in the Jean Monnet Chair in Energy and Innovation Strategies at CEU. His research is centered on energy governance, innovation strategies, etc. So please, Mike LaBelle, please, you have the floor.
Okay, great. Thank you very much, Thomas. So first, I want to thank you all for coming tonight, and even those that are watching later. I just want to kind of echo first, before I start off, what Viktoria said about great professors. I actually want to say we have great alumni, and the alumni network has been brought up. But the research I'm going to present to you tonight really is part of the, I would say, outcome of our alumni network that we actually have. So I relied on research assistants that were students at CEU and made contacts for me. So they were very helpful in getting contacts with different people. And my opening slide here demonstrates that. So this is a picture of me on this LNG ship called the Independence in Lithuania in the Klaipėda harbor. So it's an LNG, it's a liquefied natural gas ship that sits in the harbor in Lithuania and demonstrates the independence of the country towards gas infrastructure around the world. So it's broken away from Russia. But that was because we had a student, then she became my research assistant from Lithuania. So we had the map earlier about where everybody is located around the world. And I would say we pretty much have people all over the entire world. So when it comes to networking or finding out about questions, and even I would say the expression of the title of my talk tonight about cultures really is about CEU and this global network that we have. Because as I think the current students and all our students would echo, is that culture and this diversity that we have at CEU is one of our greatest assets. And for me, it's really important. And I think what I'll be presenting to you tonight is kind of reflection of that. So just a little bit of background. So I'm a professor of, I would say, energy and energy policy at CEU. I'm in the economics and business department, but also the environmental science and policy department. And my area of interest really is the energy sector, a bit of as a holistic understanding of that, both from a societal point of view, but also from what kind of technologies are necessary to create an energy transition, a clean one. So this is what we're going to get into tonight, the challenges and really the emphasis of this energy transition that's underway. And so what I've done is actually just this past month in November, I had a book published called Energy Cultures. And this is kind of what my framing is for tonight. So when also, it's not just me, but all the professors we all do cutting edge research. And so I really want to emphasize this. It both explains, I would say, maybe my underdevelopment in the presentation today, but also that we all are really doing active research and we bring that into the classroom. And it's really important because it means we're out in the field, we're meeting with maybe businesses or whatever area we're in. We're meeting with people and understanding how the things are changing constantly. And right now, I think earlier I had to write a few answers to some questions about what I would be talking about tonight. And as it brought up COVID and all, how the world is changing, I mean, it's just changing dramatically. And kind of understanding both the importance of the present moment, these dramatic changes that are underway, but also stepping back and kind of having a deeper understanding of maybe a theoretical, conceptual lens, and how to understand all the changes helps. And for me, this is why I developed this. It's kind of a theory, a concept of energy cultures, because it allows us to step back from the present, I would say, energy debates that we're having and really go deeper into a culture that's in each country. So this is what I'll have for you as an introduction, is really it's energies, but energy cultures. It's in a sense it's a travel log. Here we have Lithuania, for example. I also have examples of Hungary and Myanmar. And it was kind of me on a journey, if we can say, around the world, looking at how people use energy and the geopolitics around that, the social side of that, and importantly, I would say for tonight, the business side of that as well. And so here, I'm going to talk about this in both a physical sense, so we can always see the physical energy infrastructure that is out there, but also there's this much deeper social system. And I would say that's probably where the cultural aspects come into play. And I think where we talk about Eastern Europe or Western Europe, we all kind of understand the different countries we come from, and when you travel from one country to another, how people consume energy. I'm American, so when I go back to America, the scale of the cars and the culture, even just around the call, drive-in movie theaters, much easier to go to Starbucks by driving your car, right? Rather than walking into a Starbucks. So all these things, if you think about it, it involves the consumption of energy, which also, not just the consumption, relies on the production of energy. So it has to rely on usually fossil fuels coming out, or if we really want to engage and think about a sustainable future, it also requires clear government policies. It requires companies to invest into cleaner technologies. So there's a huge amount of debate over how this transition can unfold. Even the presidential elections in the United States, for example, from Trump, who really embraced coal and oil, to Biden, who seems to be much more on this cleaner energy transition side of things. So what we have here are two pictures. I'll start with the one on the right-hand side here first, the visible energy cultures. And here what I'm going to introduce is some of the case studies that I actually use in some of the courses. And here, this is actually animal feed. It's at an ethanol facility here in Hungary. It's called Clone Bio. The parent company is called Ethanol Europe. And they in one sense, and this is a company I've been following for about 5 years now, and we usually take the students there every year. It's called Dunafuldvar, along the Danube, about an hour and a half south of Budapest. And we take the students there and we see the production process of ethanol. And in ethanol kind of seems like, well, that's pretty easy. You take corn and you extract it and you get the ethanol from that, right? So that's easy. But actually it turns out to be a very, very, I would say, innovative and well-managed company that I've documented over the years. And what we're looking at here is actually a pile of animal feed. So this comes from the corn. It's not just corn, but it's all almost most of it is the yields for the cows, which it usually is fed to, is actually increased. Or the chicken, it can be used as chicken feed too. So there's certain supermarkets in the UK that require that the chickens be fed this type of food in order to be sold in a supermarket there. So this is really high quality feed for animals. So it seems a bit low tech with ethanol, but actually, as I'll explain a bit more with this company, they're doing much, much more. And so these types of things, you can see the corn growing in the fields in Hungary, and then you can see the infrastructure around ethanol. And of course, even if you fill up your car, you have an ethanol blend in that. Usually, I think in Europe, around 5%, maybe 6%. So there's always this both the physical landscape of corn and being transformed into something that we're going to use, okay? And the interesting side, I would say, of this company and ethanol is that it only exists because of governments. So it's a regulated component in the blend for gasoline, for example. It actually creates a cleaner burning gasoline in the car, and it actually reduces ozone emissions in the atmosphere. So it actually has a bonus impact down there, and it reduces the amount of oil that has to be burned in cars. So it adds up if you add it all up. So, but this is a regulated market created by, for example, the EU, but also national governments, because they determine how much ethanol is going to be blended in. But on the left-hand side here, this is Professor Nyonyo, who's pointing at the solar panel. This was in a trip last year. I went to Myanmar, and I would just say the Open Society is heavily involved in Myanmar and trying to help the transition from a very strong military regime to hopefully a much more democratic regime in the future. But it was such an amazing experience. I went there on a teaching exchange, and we went out to a couple villages. And here's an example of the villagers using just solar panels just to get some electricity. So many of the houses and many of the people are of course really poor, but they afford these solar panels and the kits with essentially basically a car battery. And for about $150, you can buy a big solar panel, and that way people they're able to charge their phones. So a lot of people have smartphones, and they have TVs, and some have refrigerators, and that's about it. And this is what they use the solar panels for. But the phones are that important to them, and this means of communication, that they buy they buy the solar panels. Because for them, I can get into greater detail on this case study, but they really don't have a centralized grid that they can tap into. Even though actually in this village, I have other pictures, but if you look right up, there's actually the distribution network. So there's actually wires with electricity above the village. Just the villagers themselves are not allowed to tap into that. So they have to go out and they have to buy the solar panels. So in this sense, it's if we step back for a minute, it's a display of the market being there and entrepreneurs selling a certain technology, and then householders buying that technology. Okay, they don't get any kind of subsidies from the government. There's absolutely nothing like that. It's a very poor country, but the people want to, and they can afford with their small salaries, the money that they earn, to buy these solar panels. So it kind of demonstrates, on one hand, we have this really in a developed country, in the developed region of Europe, a regulated approach to the energy system itself. And then in the developing world, where there's so many challenges for everybody, it's much more of a marketplace on a smaller scale there. So we have kind of these different approaches to, I would say, energy cultures, if I frame it like that. And then I want to go maybe a bit deeper, because we have the social aspect, right? So maybe in the previous pictures, we have the demonstration of poverty, and people really are not able to afford a lot, okay? But there's also trade-offs, and I just wanted to I think it's really important to talk about energy efficiency in buildings, because if you look at where the most, we could say, savings, if we think about the energy transition, usually it is using solar and wind instead of burning coal. But actually, the biggest impact on consumption, and we mean that we don't even have to produce as much, is actually in buildings. It's on the consumption side. So the greater we invest in energy efficiency, the less that needs to be produced. And actually, the more money that we save, okay? So we have a chart here. I wonder if I have a mouse, maybe you can see it. But here we have the chart here, and this is actually research done by my colleague Diana Urga-Vorsats in the Environmental Science and Policy Department. And here, okay, I won't go into all the great details, but here on the left-hand side, you can see the total energy requirement for the year for certain years. And then the savings, basically. And here, if you have the top line, and this is kind of like a minimal energy saving effort, okay? But here, if you look at all the way down at the very bottom of the line, it's really an investment into buildings where they're really super energy efficient, okay? And you could maybe say, well, this is a difference. I'm just throwing some numbers here. Maybe they're 40% more efficient if I spend more money on some windows compared to 60% more efficient or 80% more efficient. I mean, it makes sense. The more money you spend, in a sense, the more efficient a building could be, okay? But not just that, but it also comes out over the lifetime of the building, okay? So here, the projections all the way out. This is actually for Poland and different scenarios. But the main point is that, sure, these things can be more expensive up front, but the longer you spread this out over time, then basically both the cheaper financially it is and also the emissions, right? So basically, if you consume very little energy for heat, for example, whether that's gas, whether it's a district heating, or whether that's even firewood, right? It means over the lifetime of the building or the structure that you're heating, even a factory, it means the less gas you need to buy, the less fuel wood you need to buy. So all these things really have a long-term cost, and they have a really big impact on the environment as well. So these social issues are really important. So it starts to become quite important to understand what drives innovation in technology. Is it government policy? Is it like regulations where we regulate to encourage greater ethanol production in the EU? Is it regulation that encourages greater energy efficiency, for example? So the EU, we go in my classes, we look at the EU quite a lot. But of course, we also look at developing countries too. So India, for example, has really big goals in clean energy for solar and for wind, and they're able to do it. I have a podcast I put on, and just the other day we had an interview with IRENA. It's the International Renewable Energy Agency, and they just had a report that came out about the southeast of Europe. And it's really this kind of balance between, do they invest and get regulations to increase energy efficiency in buildings, or do they actually make a big investment into, say, district heating? Okay, because if you have super efficient buildings, you actually don't really need to heat them because they're that good at retaining the heat. But maybe an old city that has difficulty in renovating its infrastructure, maybe you do want to invest a lot into the district heating system to make it work. So this is always this interplay, and it really depends on the city. It depends on the, we could say, scale of that. Is it just the city? Is it the country level? So what kind of policies are there? And importantly, because, and it really depends on the country too, there's not always a government policy in place over a certain type of technology, right? So or there's not so much encouragement from a government to adopt for, say, householders to use solar panels, okay, to install those on their homes. But actually, the cost of solar, cost of wind, can almost now, and actually it is in many, many places, completely cost efficient to invest in rather than even keeping a coal-fired power plant going. It's actually cheaper to build a wind farm now than to keep even the older energy, I would say, infrastructure going. So the new technology is actually lower in cost, it's cleaner, but we still have this kind of social discussion and these ideas over the previous energy system of that keeps things going. And here I just get into this a little bit more. We have this Clone Bio, this ethanol company. And here it's interesting. I just went on their website, and from what I know and from what they tell the students, it's a bit more in depth than what they have on the website. And maybe at this point I won't go into everything they're doing, but what I'll do is just to kind of underline like how innovative this company is. They're looking here at prebiotics. So they have this huge production facility that it takes you, I don't know, like an hour and a half is usually how much is our tour, just walking around the facility. And it does produce ethanol, but also produces this feed, okay? But it's so interesting that they've had scientists and engineers approach them over the years, and they actually shifted their thinking from just producing ethanol or animal feed, but they're actually a biotech company. And so this is why they've changed their name to Clone Bio, because they realize they have this facility and they can do so many things with it. So one of the things that they're doing is making prebiotics, and since they produce everything at such a huge scale, any of these breakthrough technologies that they have can really make, it has the potential to make a lot of money, basically. So their kind of ideas that they're working with, they're an innovative hub now over biotechnologies. And so it's just by working with and knowing these managers that operate this facility, and there's not a facility in the US or in Europe that has this type of thinking, basically. So it's a really interesting and it's a really good example. In fact, one of our former EMBA students used to be a top manager at this company, and now actually he's in charge of another ethanol facility in Hungary. So it's a great example I like to talk about with my students about what can be done. And then here we have the social side of as well. On the right-hand side is just a village in Hungary, but you can see the smoke. Kind of get this impression of poverty because it is. I mean, you can drive in and it's not just smoke. This picture, I remember when I took it, it was coal, right? So they weren't just burning wood, which is kind of, that's nice and everything, but they were burning coal, which is really dirty. It's really bad, of course, your lungs. And can you imagine like people in the community walking around the village? And this is very, I don't know where everyone is from. And if we were in person, we could have more of a, I think, in-person discussion about this. But it just goes into your lungs and you're breathing this stuff. And it's super, super energy inefficient and it's super bad for your health. But yeah, it's still a common energy source throughout Eastern Europe. And then here's just an example, I kind of to tie it in. This is all biomass, right? So the ethanol example, that's biomass. Wood is biomass, of course, being used. And here's the example from Myanmar. This is the firewood that they've chopped up with an electric. I love this. It's a solar power electric fly swatter. So, in one sense, they're really advanced as well. So, but they have the firewood, and they use this for cooking. So it's kind of interesting to go between different countries and compare what are people using, you know, what is the poverty level, and how do the governments function. So in my book, I really go into much greater detail in this, and I look at Poland, I look at Lithuania, and I look at Hungary as case studies, and I go into great detail about the policies and all. So it's a very much of an academic book, but in my classes, I try to, I would say, simplify it and draw out the key themes that are not so theoretical. And here's just a picture of the village in Myanmar. So kind of I think, an interesting contrast there. So conclusion, here we go. So I kind of gave you an overall kind of view of, I would say, my interpretation of what the energy system is, what is the role of government, also what is the role or what is the impact on society. I don't have, I would say in my book, I don't have such a positive or a charitable view of government. I find governments really failing people and societies in pushing this energy transition. Even the work I'm carrying out now on the European Union's Green Deal, unfortunately, I don't take such a charitable view of that this will actually get us towards a zero carbon society by 2050. So unfortunately, I'm too critical on these things. But I just kind of have the opening questions, but I reorganize them. So they make sense, but not so much sense. So what do energy cultures do? Okay, so they provide support to retain, reject culturally significant technologies and resources. So I have the example of the United States, for example, right? So the car culture is very important. Okay, but so is, for example, in Lithuania, the use of gas for heating. Okay, I didn't go into great detail there, but that's really important too. It's an integrated system into the built infrastructure. Okay, and that connects to the social energy system that whatever technology is used in a country, or whatever, I would say, natural resource is used in the energy system, it also has to be socially acceptable. Okay, so certainly nuclear power, for example, is a great example where in certain countries that definitely nuclear power is accepted. France, Hungary, Bulgaria, Romania, but in other countries it's definitely rejected, like in Austria and Germany. Okay. And then who cares about energy cultures? So who really cares about it? Well, I think it's relevant. So this is my point, is that it's relevant because it's in the physical energy system. So in all the pictures I've shown to you, they have some kind of physical component, of course, because it's a picture, right? But in one sense, the pictures also miss these cultural relations, right? The things that we know. This is why I kind of explain it as like a travel format, right? Because when you're traveling, there's something else going on, right? With the people and how they interact and all. So there's still this physical expression of difference, but also there's very much, I would say, embedded and this values-based, and it's more implicit what's different underneath the surface. That it's really interesting to get into. And so what are energy cultures? Well, I kind of like to describe them because there's really no definition, but they get into transformative, I would say, power relations, okay? And I won't get into it all now, but the role of governments, in a sense, mediate this, right? The governments, they build the infrastructure, they allow infrastructure to be built, right? Or they can spend money or they cannot spend money on infrastructure. So there's all these choices that governments make or don't make in what they do around the energy infrastructure, okay? And they do influence then the cultures, and certainly people do. So with that, then these are just some guiding questions. What do you do with energy culture? So what's the takeaway for you tonight? I would say from a business point of view, if what you're interested in, and it comes down to, as for example, where do you invest, right? So let's say you're really interested in having a company that's focused on solar panels, okay? Well, would you go to a company or a country that has some subsidy for it, or that even is just socially open to have solar panels, okay? Or do you go to a country where they people really like nuclear power, okay? And maybe they don't have the money to invest in solar panels. So understanding these differences, not just the financial take in a country, but also just the cultural aspects of that country are really important to consider. And the same thing goes with resources and technologies. So identifying who your customer is more than just, I would say, where the biggest tax break is, right? You have to look at a much longer term relationship in a country, and how does that play out in both the built environment that's there now and where things are headed in the future. So thank you for the time to give this presentation. And just if you're interested, I have two last things. One is the podcast I've launched a couple months ago. We have a lot of cool things coming up next couple months. That's the My Energy 2050 podcast, where I guess you can listen to it on most of the platforms. There's a website. And here's just a closing picture of an elephant sanctuary in Myanmar. So they've taken the elephants basically out of the woods. So they were used to cut down trees. The deforestation of the forest in Myanmar were really problematic, but they had elephants helping. So now they're out of a job because basically they banned all logging for the next, I think, 10 to 20 years in Myanmar. And so now they're trying to develop ecotourism in the country. And so it's kind of an, I don't know, I love the country. It's so for me, when I think about what does energy culture actually mean, it means about going to different countries and looking at how they use resources and how we can actually improve like what they do, what technologies are most relevant for that, what kind of business model is most relevant for that country or that small town, something like this. So with that, thank you very much, and I will stop sharing.
Thank you, Mike, for this wonderful presentation. We will now proceed to the general Q&A question. I've received a couple of questions from you in private, and let's just get in the middle of it and start with the questions. Yusuf, this question is for you. Almost all MBA-related study materials are available online, most of them for free or close to that. What does your course offer purely in terms of gained knowledge? I'm not asking about networking, that we couldn't get somewhere else for the fraction of the cost.
Thank you for that question. So I guess it depends on what the questioner thinks knowledge to be, right? But knowledge, of course, takes various forms, right? So there's stuff you can read in books or you can read online, but actually that's less than 10% of the total amount of knowledge you gain from participating in an MBA program. Much of the knowledge you gained is tacit knowledge. By tacit knowledge, we mean that you gain it by observing others do things well. You can think about, for example, having a colleague giving a presentation during a class, and you kind of learn techniques and ways of presenting more effectively. And then you've also got the capacity to develop other transferable skills and knowledge, such as managing team contexts. It can also be things like helping others learn through coaching and mentoring. So sure, you can watch a 15-minute YouTube video on how to mentor, but unless you're actually doing that mentoring, it's only a theoretical construct. And I think another very important point that's worth mentioning about our MBA program is that learning isn't a one-way idea. We don't have professors who stand up and lecture and participants who passively absorb. The whole basis of the learning experience is that the faculty are learning from the participants and the participants are learning from the faculty. So I would say, take your massive online open courses for free or watch a bunch of videos on YouTube, and you'll be gaining less than 10% of the benefit you'll get from joining an MBA program. And not just our MBA program, any MBA program, although I happen to believe our MBA program is particularly good at the other 90% of knowledge and skills-based learning.
Thank you, Yusuf. I would now switch to Maciej with the question, what is the major benefit or offering for a corporate person in your executive MBA compared to other programs?
Hi. So I think there are three important benefits which make this program unique. I mean, the first one is in terms of how we put together the curriculum. It's very important that this program kind of balances. Most of the MBAs, we know it because we are in this industry, are either internally, they are either known as hard MBAs, by which we mean a lot of number heavy classes like finance, data, or they are soft MBAs. Yes, and like if you were an MBA professor, you would know which one is which. Yes, and we took this sort of very multidisciplinary world-class teaching team that we could assemble at CEU, and we thought, how about creating a program that is both, that is very good at delivering those quantitative hard skills that are increasingly needed to make better decisions, but also have this robust, interactive, strategic component that my colleague, Professor Akbar, was talking about. Yes, how to make both of those things at the high level, and I think we really calibrated this program in a way that it's working, that there is this balance. Yes, so that's the first reason why we are significantly better than our competition. The second reason is that we are a community that actually believes in something, and this is actually important. I mean, you may not believe in open society and still prefer, it's like going to a restaurant. Yes, like, I mean, it's better to have a meal prepared by somebody who is passionate about what they are doing. Yes, and what is important with a mission-driven program like ours, yes, that was willing to move from our main headquarters from one country to another, as all our Hungarian participants in this broadcast know well, because we stood for our beliefs. So this is not just a PR message, it's not an advertising message. We are really passionate about making societies less hierarchical, more open. And what it gives you is you are surrounded at every stage of this very experiential journey that an MBA is by people who actually believe in something and are not just like ticking the boxes because MBA teaching happens to be their job. That's number two. The third thing that I think is unique is that the entire logistics of this program, like Thomas mentioned, both the very affordable tuition and this unique modular program, which is really cutting edge, top in class in the industry. This idea of piggybacking on holidays. I mean, by the way, it connects with the second part. It's very inconvenient for us, for the instructors, to teach over long weekends, which we can't have. Yes, because we need to every year teach. Yes, you do it for 2 years. We need to do it every year. But because we are so passionate about bringing a course that really kind of fits people's life, that doesn't leave you with a mountain of debt, that doesn't destroy your family life by, forcing you to commit 36 weekends. I think that all the conscious effort in designing that experience is pretty unique in the industry. So those who think that balanced curriculum, the focus and passion that is put in this, and the meticulous design are I think, truly unique.
Thanks, Maciej. Can you respond to the next question? How about exam periods and schoolwork outside the preset dates? How much time does it take approximately, etc.?
Yes, but before we get there, it occurred to me that, like, this question, very good question about, like, why not to just do it online? We actually have our current participant, Viktoria,
right,
who is with us, and Vicky, why didn't you choose an online training? I think would you be willing to pitch in on this?
Yeah, sure. Well, obviously, when we had this whole pandemic situation, it seemed very convenient to have an online course. And even I got into quarantine, I got both of the experience. But I have to tell you, it's very different to be there in person. Just when you have the conversations, when you have a coffee break to talk about a lot of different things, not just only about the materials you have to discuss or the debates you have during the sessions, it's a whole lot different experience than having it fully online, to be honest. I mean, yes, of course, it's great online, but just to sit in front of a laptop for, I don't know how many hours a day for X days, 4 or 9 days, it just doesn't give you the same experience. So when I got to Vienna in October, I really enjoy it. I'm not saying it was like during this pandemic situation. I'm not saying I didn't have some concerns, but it was very well organized. We got tested. We couldn't go into the building before we got tested. Then we couldn't go out, etc. So it was very safe, and we got like all of the safety measures everywhere, to be honest, in the classroom as well, and even like in the whole building everywhere. And yes, it's very different. Even if you have a task, let's say, let's have a debate, and you just, all right, how to form a team, let's get together, you and you go there, and you think through this and that, and it's just a lot harder to do it online. I'm not saying we cannot do that. Of course, now technology is there. You can do almost everything. And we even now had some online participants, but you cannot really replace very personal relationships with online relationship and online participation. That's my experience about it.
Mike, do you want to add something to online?
Yeah. So I just want to definitely say, now that I finished the presentation, I don't think I ever talk for a half hour straight. So it's a very uncomfortable way to do it. I would say it's just to underline the online and offline are really different. Hopefully the quality is not so much lower online, but I mean, I just know I'm developing the courses for the winter term, and it just has to be developed much differently. And in person, it's much more interactive. It's much more, I don't want to say more enjoyable, because we are in the situation we are, and there are advantages for online learning, I think. But you learn, you get to know who people are. You even informally, after the class or during the breaks, you get a chance to talk to each other, and you can bring in people's experiences. So the physical environment is really important. And yes, under the current conditions, we do have to do online, but it's done differently. But the preference, and I totally agree with this, in person is a definitely different way, and I would say a better way to do things.
That's exactly just one thing to pitch on. That is when I was online during the summer, I was so jealous for the rest of the team that they sent me pictures that, okay, we are having, I don't know, wine on the terrace, we are having coffee together, we further discuss this and that topic. It's a pity you were not here. And it was so, I mean, obviously there are a lot of things you cannot discuss during the course because you have like, let's say 2 hours and that's it. And then there are a lot of unfinished topics. And when you go out for a coffee, you still continue the same conversation. And this is a very different, I think it's a great opportunity. So one shouldn't miss it, and one shouldn't change it fully for an online experience.
Thank you. Going back to Maciej on the question of exam periods and time effort.
So it's, as Vicky said, I mean, we are not a diploma mill. So just to be very clear, yes, we are not, this is not like an experience whose aim is to simply give you a qualification on your CV. The experience is to transform your career, your profile, to truly sort of lift you from the functional to the strategic level. Doing this is challenging. However, we are doing everything that is humanly possible to make this experience, as smooth compared to our, competitors and industry standards as possible. We set up modules years in advance so that you know when you need to plan the schedule. Between the modules, we have formal preparation weeks, which are also announced years in advance. You know that during these weeks, you will need to focus a little more on preparation. Then you have, after each module, you have projects, team projects, and sometimes exams. Early on in the course, you have exams, later mostly the projects, for which there is also like extended time period. You need to be very efficient, especially in your teamwork. But the whole idea is to sort of plan the effort and create a predictable environment when you can plan ahead. You know, our exam period, for example, it's 14 days during which you can take an exam. You need to find a 2 or 3 hour slot for this. Of course, this is challenging for any professional, but it's doable if you can do it at any point of the 14-day period. And that means when you travel, when you take an effort, you know, we don't waste your time by putting you in class for 3 hours and make you write the exam. We want this precious time when you are in the module to be focused on things that Vicky mentioned and Michael mentioned, yes? Interacting, debating, solving problems together, learning from each other, yes? And then the other things we try to outsource away from the modules and spread them around the period, which are about 3 months. Yes, it's every a module, 1 module per quarter. So between those, that also makes kind of a smoother learning experience, so that you don't have like, you know, the program is not just a few days every 3 months, because those other activities connect those modules. So I think that's our approach.
Thanks. Yusuf, the next question is for you. Are we planning to have the EMBA course online, not only given the current pandemic situation? And can you tell us something more about the COVID measures in general?
Thank you, Thomas. So our first preference is always to have in-class learning to start with. So that's our kind of, you know, our principle. But we're also guided naturally by public health regulations in place at the time of the modules. And we do everything we can within our power that is fully in line with public health regulations, either in Hungary or in Austria, to have in-class participation. Now, of course, some of our participants are outside the Schengen area and neither have EU citizenship nor permanent residence. So for them, currently, because of the current EU restrictions on entry, they are joining us online. And one of the things that Thomas mentioned in the presentation about the classrooms is we have world-class technology which enables the participants to be in the class while being online. While of course it's not absolutely the same as being physically in class, our participants can be with us online. You know, if I could tell you right now the exact public health situation in March or May of next year when the modules begin, then I would either be lying to you or have a particular predictive power which I should be spending on other things to become incredibly rich. So, you know, we are guided by the public health regulations with the principle that we want to do our classes in person. You know, Viktoria mentioned rapid COVID tests. We will do all manner of things which make the physical participation as comfortable, safe, and successful as possible.
Thanks, Yusuf. The next question, going back to Maciej. from a professional with vast experience in his field. In this case, it's IT, and he's on a break in his career. How can the program help him launch himself into a management role?
So first of all, if your entire experience is 5 years, then you need to wait a few more years to apply, because we require a minimum of 8 years work experience to apply. But if we are talking about somebody, we have a lot of participants. Actually, Lorant is a great example of participants who kind of reached a position of excellence within their functional area. And the key thing that we can add to the career journey, this transformation into management role of those participants from a variety of sectors, is this, this broad ability to understand fields of management and organizational operations in a variety of organizations that are outside of their functional area. So if you are in IT, all those other business functions, yes, finance, marketing, strategy, organizational behavior, leadership, human resource management, innovation management, operations management, those things may be pretty distant to your narrow experience that you've had so far, yes, and the ability to get exposure to this other field, not in a theoretical way that, as we established, you can do in an online course, but in an interactive way, to see people in operations management class who, the interaction of world-class instructor who provides a framework with some of your classmates who, manage operations in large factories, yes, or in a marketing class, again, yes, a world-class thought leader in marketing, giving you a framework, organizing discussion, being kind of a conductor of the orchestra, and people who, run marketing departments in multinationals or even in non-profit organizations. This is what powers this transformation to the managerial strategic managerial role. Is this exposure, this feeling of being comfortable with a variety of business problems, not only your narrow field. And that's where our program is really, really good at.
And Marce, if I can only build on this.
Absolutely, go ahead.
So thanks for the very positive presentation. In my case, was really reaching a frustration. And I'm sure that everybody in IT now considers this it's a great time to be in IT, looking at everything which is happening around us. But what you're seeing is technology is way ahead of what it's getting transposed into the organizations. So we are, as IT people, we are delivering a lot of output, but we see little outcome on it. And I think this is the part where having this professionalization in management helps you push this output into outcomes which are visible in the business. I said before, if you think at digital transformation, the technological part, it's only a very small percentage of it. We have for it at BCG a very nice image with an iceberg where we are showing what's above the water. This is what you see as technology, but what's below it, it's a lot of change management. It's a lot of organization. It's a lot of identifying where are the outcomes which really matter for your organization or which really matter in your industry. And these are the skills, these are the capabilities you will be winning if you go to such a program.
Thank you, Laurent. The last question for today I would address to Yusuf. It's about the application process.
Thank you again. Once you submit your documentation, we assess your documentation and decide whether or not we would like to invite you for an interview. An interview typically takes place with a CEU faculty member, and then that faculty member will make a recommendation to the admissions committee. The admissions committee will weigh up both your application and the report, the report of the interview. The faculty member will be filling out a form as you're speaking, and a decision is taken on admissibility to the program. And that, of course, there are a number of factors that go into that. And then what we do is we then ask the rector and president of the university, who's currently Michael Ignatieff, to admit you into the program. So, it's a multi-layered process. It normally takes a few weeks, depending on how busy things are. Obviously, as we get closer to application deadlines, we tend to get more applications, but that's pretty much how the application process takes place.
Thank you. Are there any more questions from the audience right now? No? Okay. I would like to take the opportunity and thank everybody involved in today's open day, especially to Vicky and Mike and Lorant. Thank you for joining us and contributing to the success of the open day. And of course, thanks for all the attendees who were present and asked us questions. And please get in touch with me directly if you have any other more questions on fellowships, scholarships, and just get in touch with me. Thank you for joining us.